Fiji's National Action Plan for the prevention of violence against women and girls. I also welcome the Honourable Ministers, Assistant Ministers, Honourable Members of Parliament, Excellencies, Heads of Missions, Embassies, and members of the Diplomatic Corps, heads of UN organizations, representatives of civil society organizations, permanent secretaries and senior government officials, faith-based organizations, academic institutions, corporate and statutory bodies, youths, media partners, ladies and gentlemen. And I welcome each one of you to this concerted national effort to eliminate violence against women and girls, embarking on a journey that starts today. I'm deeply honored to stand here today along with the Honorable Prime Minister and share with Fijians that the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation will lead on behalf of the Government of Fiji the development of a 5-year, from 2021 to 2026, National Action Plan to prevent violence against all women and girls, with the start of the national consultations, which kicks off today, across 13 settings in Fiji, in close partnership with the National Action Plan Technical Working Group, government, civil society, faith-based organizations, and community stakeholders. The goal is to consult at least 2,500 Fijians across 13 sectors. I shall underline that these consultations will take place in 2 phases. Kicks off today, then picks up again from January to February next year, and the second phase from February to May next year. Hope to have a first National Action Plan by December 2021. It is also my blessed task to introduce our chief guest this morning, the Honourable Prime Minister of Fiji. Because we all know who he is, I would like to take some time to really try and summarize the hallmarks of his leadership as Prime Minister of Fiji, particularly on the empowerment of women and gender equality initiatives that he has implemented from 2007 to date. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, the ministry that I serve serves the most marginalized in society. Children, poor, those living with disabilities, the elderly, women. The exponential increase of around 70%, both for the Department of Women and also for the ministry as a whole, our budget increase, underlies the Honourable Prime Minister's vision and leadership in bringing in marginalized in our community, empowering them, including them in the development of our country to ensure that no one is left behind. In 2009, the Bainimarama-led government introduced our first ever domestic violence laws, which created a specific mechanism for the protection of victims of domestic violence and the prosecution of perpetrators. The removal of the need to have the evidence of a rape victim corroborated in court through the Crimes Act in 2009 made the prosecution of this crime much easier, empowering victims who are almost always women. A further amendment to the marriage age, raising it to 18 years in 2009, ensured the ending of the exploitation of young women through marriage. In 2012, an amendment made to the Family Law Act recognized the rights of de facto spouses in relation to property and spousal maintenance, which protected particularly women who are the most vulnerable when such relationships end. In 2017, the Honourable Prime Minister launched our first national domestic violence helpline, 1560, which empowers victims of domestic violence, who are almost always women, to report instances of violence through the toll-free line. This complements the Child Helpline, 1325, which was launched in 2015 for the reporting of the abuse and neglect of children. And today we gather to launch our national consultations, which is aimed at informing the consolidation of our first ever National Action Plan for the prevention of violence against women and girls. A plan which will transform the landscape of efforts geared towards the elimination of violence against women and girls in Fiji. Honourable Prime Minister, sir, the women of Fiji are in a much better place now than we were before your leadership, and it is in that light that I will now ask everybody gathered here today to put our hands together for our chief guest, the Honourable Prime Minister.
the Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Honorable Marisaini Wuriwanga, Honorable Cabinet Ministers and Members of Parliament, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Ambassador of the European Union in Fiji and the Pacific, His Excellency Mr. Sujiro Sim, the UN Women Fiji Multi-Country Office Representative, Ms. Sandra Bernklo, Permanent Secretaries and senior government officials, the civil society organizations, ladies and gentlemen, Bula Binaka, and a very good morning to you all. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls and marks the beginning of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to acknowledge, more than acknowledge, I want to praise and thank the advocates and women's rights organizations and the community-based organizations that have been working tirelessly to end the suffering of so many women and the fear that they must live with every day. One woman who experiences violence is one too many. One child who experiences or witnesses violence is one too many. One person who thinks it is okay to assault a woman is one too many. One witness who turns a blind eye to such violence is one too many. One woman turned away when she asked for help is one too many. And one man who assaults a woman or child and is not held accountable and punished according to law for his crime is one too many. But more than that, when a man is not brought to justice for an attack on a woman or child, it creates an environment of impunity and permissiveness that no civilized society can accept in good conscience. You've heard me speak out on this subject for several years. We have changed laws, as you've heard, and we are enforcing the laws, and we will not take one step back. Eliminating violence against women and girls will not be easy. We know it is far too prevalent in Fiji, and it is unfortunately becoming embedded in our culture. But we are not constrained by history. And we can and we must purge the ugliness we retain from our past. As societies become more enlightened, they shed negative behaviors that were once common. They confront their past and their harmful traditions. They confront their prejudices, their superstitions, and their violence too. It happens everywhere, and it is happening here. So I'm quite pleased to be here today for the official launch of a national consultation process for the development of the Fiji National Action Plan to prevent violence against all women and girls. Fiji will be the first Pacific Island country and one of the only two countries globally, alongside Australia, to have a whole of government, whole of population, inclusive and fully funded evidence-based approach to developing a national action plan to prevent violence against all women and girls before it starts. I extend my gratitude to our valued development partners, the European Union, the governments of Australia and New Zealand, and UN Women for making this significant initiative possible through the Pacific Partnership to End Violence Against Women and Girls program, as well as the working group, secretariat and NGOs and civil society organizations which have supported this consultation process. It pains me to say that 2 of every 3 women in Fiji have experienced physical or sexual violence from a male intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 5 women have experienced sexual harassment in a workplace. 1 in 3 women in Fiji have experienced physical or sexual violence from a man who is not their partner. In 2019 alone, 10 women were killed by their intimate partners. Our women and girls are targeted at home as well as in their workplace, in schools, in hospitals and universities, on the street and online. No space is immune. This is not only affects the survivors themselves, but the children who are exposed to it, their extended families, their friends, their work colleagues, and ultimately the nation. There are not only personal stories behind these statistics, but there are also attitudes, social norms, gender roles, and rigid stereotypes where everyday sexism, discrimination, and disrespect of women and girls go unchallenged in our society. It is normalized, excused, and tolerated. Those attitudes are embedded in gender inequality, men's power and control over women, and a failure to recognize the inherent equality and dignity of all women and girls. As you have also heard, as the Prime Minister, I'm proud that it was my government in 2009 that brought into law the Domestic Violence Act, which for the first time laid a legal foundation that recognized gender-based violence as a very significant national problem. The Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 has made the reporting of domestic violence easier for survivors. The Child Helpline 1325 has given child victims of abuse a way to have their cries heard. Of course, as we know, girls and boys both suffer from violence at the hands of abusers. Those abusers can be men. They can be women as well. So it's important all Fijian children know these services. There are services they can call on. The service delivery protocol for domestic violence service providers continues to provide and strengthen a collaborative and coordinated response to cases. Despite the legal and policy reforms we have undertaken and the programs we have established, we know that much needs to be done to stem violence against women and girls. And the statistics bear that out. In order to end this national scourge, we must first come to a shared understanding amongst Fijians as to why violence against women and girls happens in Fiji, its root causes and contributing factors. For starters, we must eradicate the notion that women are in any way weaker or somehow lesser than. Girls, boys, and indeed every Fijian must see women as leaders, as decision makers, as movers and shakers in society. That begins with securing equality of opportunity for every Fijian. And we know opportunity is born from education. We have made education free in Fiji, and that has had a profound impact on girls and young women most of all. It used to be that faced with financial considerations, parents would choose which children to send to school, and they mostly choose their sons. Together, we flipped that narrative on its head. Today, 92% of girls in Fiji complete their secondary school education, and women make up the majority of graduates in our tertiary institutions. This new generation of empowered and well-educated women deserve to rise as far as their abilities can take them. For its part, the Fijian government has chosen to lead by doing not only building a foundation of a violence-free Fiji, but in creating equality of opportunity for Fijian women. We have introduced open merit recruitment and advancement within the civil service. That means people are hired and promoted based on their ability, not based on their ethnicity, not based on who they know, and certainly not based on their gender. For the first time, women can compete on a level playing field. For the first time, merit and merit alone matters. Today, nearly 30% of leadership positions in the civil service are women. Given, given the achievements of Fijian women in education, we expect that figure to grow. But that movement can't end at the halls of government buildings. It must sweep across society, whether it's in sport organizations, in business, in parent-teacher association, clubs, or community groups. We've sadly seen the same painful story play out time and again in Fiji. Women who had the skills, drive, and ambition to lead found themselves behind the scenes, in the charge of less qualified men because gender took precedence over hard work. That era must end. We must see the democratization of every workplace, every community, every club, so that the playing field is level everywhere and women can achieve the success their ideas and talents deserve. As more women kick down the doors of old boys' club by rising to become decision makers in government, as well as in the political life, in the private sector and across our society, we do some of the most important work of rooting out the ugly superiority complex that so often breeds violence against women and girls in this country. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, violence against women and girls is not a happy or simple subject for the nation to discuss. But most of the things that are worth doing are hard. But we do not shy away from them precisely because they are worth doing. This important conversation through the national consultation will ensure that the Fiji National Action Plan is informed by the broad variety of experience, knowledge, and expertise that exist in Fiji. The challenge for all of us, government at all levels, each one of us as Fijians, lies in this: to act together. Together, we can put measures in place to stop violence before it starts. Substantial global evidence shows that violence against women and girls is preventable. It is not inevitable. It is not a permanent condition that we must endure. And it is preventable within years, not lifetimes. When we look back on this gathering, wouldn't we all like to say that on this day, November 25th, 2020, we started something that changed Fiji forever and for the better. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, I'm delighted to open the national consultation for the development of the Fiji National Action Plan to prevent violence against all women and girls. Thank you, Vinagwele, and God bless you all.
Now, with the official start of our consultation, I will now invite the Honourable Minister to escort our chief guest to the seats allocated on the floor for the viewing of our video. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is to share with you the preview of some of the communication products that we are developing for the national consultations to help build a shared understanding of violence against all women and girls in Fiji.
Today the sun rose in Fiji, shining bright between the mountains and above the sea. All over, people began their day. And on this day, 2 babies were born, a girl and a boy.
This girl and boy grow up as friends. They both love playing sports, but she's not allowed to. Instead, she helps out at home with the cooking and cleaning. When he gets hurt, he's told to be a man, so he hides his emotions and instead gets angry. He starts fights with other boys and later other men. He feels like he always has to be strong. It can be exhausting.
From a young age, they are shaped by traditional ideas about gender, and what it means to be a good girl and a good boy. When they begin to date, he gets jealous of her talking to other men. He criticizes and controls her, monitoring her phone, social media, and whereabouts. At work, there are few women in leadership roles. A male colleague makes sexual comments about her body. When she tells management, they say he was teasing. Eventually, she resigns. Her husband wants her to stay home, to be a good wife and mother anyway.
She has no income and is dependent on him for everything. He refuses to give her money for household expenses, even though he has extra and uses it for alcohol or kava. He won't let her use family planning and monitors her visits to the clinic. When he hits her, at first she doesn't tell anyone. She doesn't want to bring shame to her family, and she's been taught that violence is normal after all. He justifies it by telling himself she deserves it. If she was a good wife or mother, he wouldn't need to. When the beating gets really bad, she tells her family. They excuse his behavior and advise her to be a better wife. The violence continues.
This story is a common one in a society where women and men are not equal. Violence is often seen as normal, and men have power and privilege over women. But it doesn't end here. For their children, witnessing violence against their mother has lifelong impacts. It teaches them that violence is just part of marriage. They learn that a man must discipline his wife and that he has the right to control women and girls. The cycle of violence continues.
Violence against women and girls is one of the world's gravest human rights violations. Globally, 1 in 3 women will experience physical and/or sexual violence from a partner in their lifetime. In Fiji, the rates are double this. 2 in 3 women in Fiji have experienced physical and/or sexual violence from a male intimate partner in their lifetime. Some of the highest statistics in the world. 1 in 3 women in Fiji have experienced physical and/or sexual violence from a man who is not their partner. And 1 in 5 have experienced sexual harassment in a workplace. Women with disabilities and women with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression experience higher rates and more severe forms of violence.
But violence against women and girls is preventable. Prevention is key. We know that gender inequality is the root cause of violence against women and girls. Together, we can put measures in place to stop violence before it starts, such as building safe spaces in schools and workplaces, promoting positive family relationships, encouraging women and girls' empowerment, and teaching boys that strength comes from respect and integrity, not from violence. It will take a holistic, comprehensive, and long-term approach.
Together we can create a society that benefits everyone, where women and men, girls and boys grow up with equal rights, respect, and opportunities, where violence against women and girls is less likely to occur, where men can be themselves and express their feelings, where all children can live up to their full potential. Tonight the sun will set and the moon will rise. What will tomorrow bring? It's up to us to decide.
Violence is preventable. It's our responsibility as a country and as individuals to stop violence before it starts. Together, we can build a new day. Help is available. Call our free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 or the Child Helpline 1325 from any network if you need to talk.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the video will form part of the package that has been developed by your technical working group and the Secretariat for the national consultation process. I will now invite Ms. Laneta Tuimambu of the Fiji Disabled Persons Federation to move our vote of thanks this morning.
The Honorable Prime Minister, Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to move the vote of thanks this morning on behalf of the Technical Working Group for the Fiji National Action Plan to prevent violence against women and girls. We thank the Honorable Prime Minister for his presence to call our beloved Fiji together to request the development of the whole of government, the whole of the population, inclusive, funded, evidence-based for a national action plan, violence against women and girls. I would like to also thank all personnel that are present here. Here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with the support and your confirmation and support to ending violence against women, for all women and girls. In our whole, my apologies, in our whole nation, across various sectors and population groups, including women with disabilities, elderly women, LGBTQI communities, young people, and other marginalized groups will come together for a talanoa to propose solutions and ideas for a peaceful and loving Fiji for all women and girls. We look forward to your support as we move forward. Vinaka Vakalevo, Danavad, and thank you.
That brings us to the end of the official segment of the launch of the National Action Plan for the Prevention of Violence Against All Women and Girls.
My name is Meriseni Vuniwanga, your Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation. It's everyone's responsibility to share unpaid domestic work in the home. Women should not be the only ones doing it, especially during a crisis. Sharing is caring, and as your Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, I encourage you to be kind and take care of one another, Fiji. Call our free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 or the Free Child Helpline 1325 from any network if you need to talk.
Dinangani lako dhurumatiko na nonta vonua ndo na ngau na mbole e sianga ni kautalevi na kia na ndeitu na vanganga taki ni lawa mbaleta na nonra vangalo mataki na mrama. Sa suleti ko nga na matawila wai na lewa kandau tauda mera marro iki no ira e ravanga maboa taki se vangalo mataki ena iwala vala kauko eso. Giri ki nandora steseni ni obise vole akaveiko se taro iwanga sala na namba ni telefoni sanga ni saumi na 25 ono saiba.
नमस्ते, मैं हूं पंडित भुवन दत्त आर्य प्रदेश सभा फिजी से। शांत और अमन भरे घर और समाज के लिए हमें हमेशा हिंसा से दूर रहना चाहिए। इनमें महिलाओं और बच्चों को हर तरह के हिंसा से सुरक्षा प्रदान करना शामिल है। आप किसी भी नेटवर्क के ज़रिए फ्री नेशनल डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस हेल्पलाइन 1560 या चाइल्ड हेल्पलाइन 1325 पर कॉल करें।
Many people with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression face severe domestic violence from partners and family. This gets worse during a national crisis when you're isolated with those who are hostile to you. As your Member of Parliament, I encourage you to check in with your rainbow relatives and friends. Don't be a bystander to gender-based violence. Call the free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 from any network. Safety for all means all.
Naivango te vita mbani vanua, nai talatala kai liu talenga ni Fiji Council of Churches. Ninda sotava e levuna rendre, e wana numi kenda uchisu, mendanda upilo mani, kalomani ira, enda tiko vei maliwai. Sa kena ngonongo, menda maro roya na nonda mata uvale, maina mbula ni vei wa mabuataki, kena vei wa lolo mataki, ki vei ira na marama kina ngoni. Kepa ka endu olomana, e lako durumatiko, nandrendre grita na namba sengni saumi na 25 saiba kangaravi kemuni na marama kena 235 engaravi kemuni na ngone mai na duanga na taliboni etiko.
Bula, I am Laniata Timambu from the Fiji Disabled People's Federation. If you or someone you know is facing difficulties due to their disability or injury, help is available. Call the National Domestic Violence Helpline on 1560 or the Child Helpline on 1325 for free from any network. We can help with referrals.
अगर हो सके अपने दिमागी सेहत का ख्याल करें। परिवार के साथ समय बिताना अच्छा है, लेकिन अगर अकेले आपको वक्त गुजारने का मन करे तब आपको ब्रेक लेने की ज़रूरत है।
अगर आप किसी से बातें करना चाहते हैं जिन्हें आप विश्वास करते हैं, तो आप किसी भी नेटवर्क के जरिए फ्री नेशनल डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस हेल्पलाइन 1560 या चाइल्ड हेल्पलाइन 1325 पर कॉल करें।
Bulavinaka, I am Sememalangi from Oceania Rugby. Isolation from family and friends can make domestic violence worse. Check in with women you know. Support services are working. Call the free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 or the Child Helpline 1325 from any network.
नमस्ते, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मैं हूँ शमीमा अली, फिजी वुमेन्स क्राइसिस सेंटर की कोऑर्डिनेटर। सभी को ये अधिकार है कि वे घर पर सुरक्षित रहें। अगर आपको गुस्सा आ रहा है या आप स्ट्रेस्ड हैं या किसी भी प्रकार के घरेलू हिंसा का शिकार हो रहे हैं या किसी भी प्रकार का हिंसा का सामना कर रहे हैं, तो हमारे फ्री नेशनल डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस हेल्पलाइन 1560 पर किसी भी नेटवर्क से कॉल करें।
Na yavango mereseni vuni wanga na nomuni minista ni marama ngone ke na valuti ni ndrapundrapua. E nonda i tavi tau dhoko na lewe ni mata vale menta bevu ke taka na dhaka kede e lama ni vale. Kasenga ni nondra i tavi tau nduanga na marama. Waka mbimbi e na ngauna ni tiko lenga. Na bevu kei e waka reitaki ni lolama ndina. E na nongu i tutu waka minista ni marama. Au sa ke rei kemuni mo ni velo mani kanda weka waitaki. Girita na namba senga ni saumi 25 saiba engaravi kemuni na marama 225 kangaravi kemuni na ngone mai na duanga na taliboni etiko.
As Fiji deals with the crisis, remember the no-drop policy for domestic violence is still in force and restraining orders can still be obtained. As your Commissioner of Police, I assure you, we will pursue all domestic violence complaints. call the nearest police station or the free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 from any network for referrals.
Ni sambulu binaka na dangole nora. Na itobo kaukaua ke na viva ka mawotaki endo baka edori talenga pira na baka sale o lewa. Baka bimbi na ngauna ni tiko lenga ni rando mai tuba te keira na ndau baka edora na itobo kaukaua ena vale se vanua baka rautaki main ronro. Me baka ni unomu ni mata ke na palimendi au ke reke muni vei tartara ke ira na we kamuni nomu ni tokani karanduindui me vei kenda. Kua ni tokona na mbula ni vei baka mawotaki se vei baka lolomataki. Giri ki nan 25 ono saiva mai nan 2 ngana taliboni etiko.
I am Reverend Tevita Mbanivanua, President of the Fiji Council of Churches. As we face many difficulties, Jesus reminds us all that we must love one another and love our neighbors. Let's keep our homes safe from all forms of violence against women and children. If you are or a loved one is experiencing violence of any kind, call the free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 or the Child Helpline 1325 from any network.
Bula, naedangu o lani e tate mambu mana Fiji Disabled People's Federation. Kebaka o iko endua, se endua, e lako dhurumatiko nan renre, kabakalenga itu na tuwa kini ngona, se maboa, e tu o ira e rarawa ni bibuke. Girita na namba senga ni somi e nan 25 ono saiva kangaravi kemuni na marama, se nan 225 kangaravi kemuni na ngone mai na duanga na taleboni etiko. Keito rawa ni bibuke.
Namaste, I am Pandit Bhuvandat from Arya Pradesava, Fiji. To have a peaceful and harmonious home and society, we must always practice non-violence. This includes protecting women and children from all forms of violence. If you or someone you know is facing violence of any kind, call free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 or the Child Helpline 1325 from any network.
Bulavinaka, naedango se mai malangilangi mena Oceania Rugby. Na nomu ya waki iko mai vei ira na nomu ito kani ke irna we kamu e rau ni bakalebutaka na mbula ni vei bakalolomataki e vale. Vei tartar ke ira na marama o kila. Girita na namba senga ni somi na 25 ono saiva kangarabi kemni na marama. 225 e ngarabi kemni na ngone mai na 2 nga na taleboni etiko.
Take time out to care for your mental health if you can. It's good to spend time with family, but also to take a break when you need some time to yourself.
Call the free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 or the Child Helpline 1325 from any network if you need to speak to someone you can trust.
Hello in Nisambula Vinaka. I'm Shamima Ali, coordinator of the Fiji Women's Crisis Center. Everyone has a right to be safe at home. Reach out to us if you are angry or stressed, experiencing domestic violence, or any other form of abuse anywhere. Call our free National Domestic Violence Helpline 1560 from any network.
consultation process for a national action plan. It's been an exciting morning for all of us, a historical day for Fiji. And like I said to the team, the work starts now. So first of all, we have a panel of highly distinguished speakers in this area before us. And we've got the Honourable Minister for Health and Medical Services, Honourable Wanganabete. We've got the coordinator for the Fiji Women's Crisis Centre, Shamima Ali, a name that's synonymous with the work in space in this country and the region. We've also got the Reverend Zerima Lomoloma, representative of the religious-based organizations in Fiji. But before that, we've also got a very distinguished panelist, the Senator Maurice Green, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Minister for Women for the Government of Australia. Australia has taken a leadership role universally in relation to the consolidation of a whole-of-government, whole-of-population approach when we're looking at prevention of violence against women and girls. So I'm very honored today. I'd like to, first of all, welcome the Honourable Maurice Green, who has recorded a message for us for this momentous occasion. Welcome.
Good morning, Prime Minister Bainimarama, Minister Vunawanga and special guests. On behalf of the Government and the people of Australia, I want to convey my sincere congratulations to Fiji on the launch of your consultation process for the development of your National Action Plan to prevent violence against all women and girls. We're all acutely aware that violence against women and girls is a persistent problem, experienced across the world, in Fiji, as you're acknowledging today, and here in Australia. I want to commend the Fijian government for bringing this complex and difficult subject out into the open. This is the only way we can talk about it and take action to prevent it. There is evidence that violence against women and girls has increased during COVID-19 all over the world. I understand in Fiji that the Fiji Women's Crisis Centre responded to 751 new domestic violence counselling cases between January and October this year. It is confronting for all of us to hear the lived experience of survivors of violence. As human beings, I believe we all share a fundamental need to feel safe, particularly in our homes, our places of work, in our schools. The consultation process for Fiji's National Action Plan is important and highly relevant in light of the current global pandemic. I commend Fiji's national efforts to prevent violence against all women and girls. I have paid particular note, Minister Vuniwanga, to the words "all women and girls" in the title for Fiji's National Action Plan. Safety cannot be reserved for just some of us. It is a universal need, and we must strive for a region that is free from violence for all of us. While violence can happen in many different contexts and relationships, it is overwhelmingly women and children who experience violence in a family context, and overwhelmingly men who use it. I commend you, Prime Minister Bainimarama, as a high-profile Pacific man and leader, for standing with Minister Vuniwanga and seeking input to a national action plan to end violence against all women and girls in Fiji, which by necessity must include actions by men. Fiji's efforts will be supported by all in our Pacific family, including Australia, to ensure that lasting and sustainable change will be achieved. Australia is strongly committed to working with Fiji and in our own country to end violence against women and girls. I know through discussions with Pacific women leaders and Pacific foreign ministers that other nations of the Pacific share this commitment too. We will work together to take action to protect our sisters, our daughters, from all forms of violence. In my discussions with Pacific women leaders this year, we've talked at length about the role that women must have in our region in tackling shared challenges. Pacific women leading national consultations and policy development, including on issues that impact women and girls, is essential and something I will continue to prioritise and support. As is the case globally, Australia also faces continuing challenges with regard to violence against women. Australia has made reducing violence against women a national priority, as well as a priority in our engagement with our region. Women and girls should always feel safe in their homes, their communities, their workplaces and online. In Australia, consultations with experts and the community have informed the development and implementation of our National Action Plan to reduce violence against women and their children 2010 to 2022. Learning from the lived experiences of women who have experienced violence, as well as the expert specialist sector who support them, is vital to ensuring our national policies and programs are well targeted and effective. Our 12-year national plan provided a strong foundation for Australia to improve the safety of women and girls in our country. One of our major achievements has been the establishment of critical architecture to support evidence-based initiatives. This includes the establishment of Our Watch, our National Primary Prevention of Violence Against Women organisation, and ANROSE, our national research organisation focused on women's safety. Australia is preparing for our next National Action Plan in 2023. Reviews of our first plan reveal that underpinning all of our national priorities is the need to build a stronger evidence base with more detailed data. Data collection is important in all of our national strategies so that we have well-informed prevention strategies, effective service delivery and stronger justice responses. As Australia looks towards developing our next national plan, one of our key areas of focus will be continuing to build the evidence base and ensuring we better understand the drivers and the impacts of violence in order to inform policy. In closing, I want to say again that I hope together as a Pacific region we can work together to reduce the prevalence of violence against women and girls and further empower women and girls to be strong leaders. Preventing violence against all women and girls is a core part of Australia's foreign policy, our economic diplomacy and our development work, and we appreciate our partnership with Fiji to promote women's economic empowerment and work towards ending violence against all women and girls. Thank you for the honour of including me in this historic launch today. I look forward to our continued collaboration in preventing and ending violence against women in Fiji, in Australia and all Pacific Island countries. Vanaka Vakulevu.
Thank you. We've heard from the Honourable Maurice Payne on this topic. We will now move on to our Honourable Minister for Health and Medical Services, Honourable Ifiremi Wanganabete. Minister, the health sector plays a key role in both responding to cases of domestic violence, rape and other forms of violence, but also in preventing violence from happening in the first place. As Minister for Health, what do you see as your role, the role that the health sector can play to reduce rates of gender-based violence in our country? And as the national consultations get underway, which parts of the health sector do you want to have consulted?
Honourable Ministers and also distinguished panel speakers and distinguished guests that I gave to the Honourable Ministers, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Your Excellencies. First and foremost, we as the Minister of Health and Medical Services, we are very pleased and honoured to be one of the key ministries contributing to this implementation of this Fiji National Action Plan to prevent violence against women and girls, and rightly so. 67% of our staff are women. And if you look at the intakes in the medical school now, nursing school, all the allied health professionals that are coming through in the University of Fiji, quite a large number of them are women. And I'm sorry to say the men in this room, in 10 years' time, when you go to the hospital, there's a 3 out of 4 chance that you'll be looked after by all women team. That is the reality. And this is not something that we are talking about because about the traumatic effects of violence against women and girls. It is something very true to our ministry. That our ministry is dominated by women. It is a ministry that is beginning to really put a lot of traction on the ground because of the important work that our women are doing. very thankful to our women for the work that they've done. Not only the training of our staff, but also the ongoing work that they're doing once they're trained. And in the core of it all, any violence at all against any woman or girl or anyone in particular is unacceptable. And as a doctor speaking, I can tell you it's totally unacceptable. It's unacceptable when somebody turns up to the hospital and they've been threatened, they've been assaulted, they've been sworn. Because you can see that the pain and the injury is not only physical, it's also mental and emotional. All of us in this room know what emotional intelligence is all about. And if that particular woman is actually on her way to be a manager, that violence against her is going to prevent her being able to achieve that purpose in the specified time that she's sought out to do so, because she's just been broken by what she's gone through. I've seen many times. I never want to see it again. I've seen so many women come into the hospital, broken hand, broken ribs, ruptured liver, heads crushed in, and it's something not to be proud of. It's nothing to be proud of. Nothing to be proud of. It's absolutely something that we should be ashamed of as men in this nation. They are our mothers. They are our sisters. They are our daughters. We cannot allow them to be violated. We have to protect them. Because the future of this nation, with the Ministry of Health and Medical Services, is born in women. If no one has ever told us before, I want to make it really clear to us today. The future of this nation's Ministry of Health and Medical Services is women. They are now 67%. When we talk about gender equality, Ministry of Health and Medical Services is already gone beyond that. Because our women are more than their men in the ministry. And while they bear the brunt, it's not only them that suffers, the family suffers, the children suffer. The quality of life of our children suffer. The quantity of what they'll be able to gain also suffers. Once they end up with us as health professionals, even if they do not disclose their violence that's been put against them. And I've seen also many of these in my former role. Many women come, either they're too ashamed, they're too frightened to say that they've been violated against. Once they may not be able to disclose it has health consequences. There's psychological consequences. They can be immediate, long-lasting, and chronic. Therefore, to sum up my small story, I do not condone violence against women and girls, and it should never be condoned. All men that are in this room and all across this nation, we should stand up and take this back. Because I'm telling you that there are a lot of women in our Ministry of Health and Medical Services. You and I will allow them, just like we will allow many other women in other organizations to look after us when we're going to seek help from them.
Like Honourable Minister, we've heard from the Honourable Minister about the role of the House in this area of violence against women. We'll now move on to our second panelist, the National Coordinator for the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, Shalima Ali. Shalima, you've been working on the front line, leading the efforts to end gender-based violence in Fiji over 30 years. From your perspective, what does it mean to you, to the Ending Violence Women's Movement, to see Fiji advance its whole of government, whole of population approach to prevent violence against all women and girls? And what do you think is critical for the success of Fiji in reducing rates of violence against all women and girls? Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, Mr. Health, Mr. Women, Ministers, all the distinguished guests here, my fellow panelists, Reverend Honourable Loma. As an NGO, an activist NGO, I will go off the written line and I will answer your questions, but I do want to say that today is a historic day, as you have said, Minister. It is historic. And Nalini and I from the Women's Rights Movement just talking this morning, it's a very emotional day for us. The day itself, 25th of November, which is the International Day of Protest Against Violence Against Women. That is what it was called in the 80s when it was first developed.
And I'm also very proud to say that I'm a founding member of the 16 Days of Activism. And we've done the campaign since 1991. And for us to have this day today to launch the consultation process and to have this plan in Fiji is really great and a culmination of the many, many years of work that we have all done together, and particularly the Fiji Women's Crisis Center. This is our 36th year of existence, and I spent half my life here. So that's so this is a great moment for us. I'm very emotional. So we've all talked about the high rates of violence, and I just want to say it again. We have very high rates of violence against women. The National Survey of 2011 showed that we have 64% of women, 2 in 3, as we have been hearing this morning, in this country, and the global average is 1 in 3. We are 2 in 3, quite high. Women suffer from sexual, physical, emotional violence, and coercive control. That is also a major part of the whole domestic violence. We have witnessed the rape of children in Fiji, the youngest being 4 months old, which I know is unimaginable. I think for consultations we need to hear the hard truth. The oldest person in this country was 90 years old. That is known to police and police records. So that is quite high. I mean, that's terrible. Sexual harassment, we've heard about, it's rife everywhere. Every woman and girl in all their diversity is at risk. No one is exempt. Then Dr. Wanga has talked about the psychological abuse of women. A lot of that also goes on, and all this has a great impact on women's psychological state. And all this violence that we're talking about are further exacerbated during crisis, as we have seen during political upheavals, during disasters, and the present pandemic. Many women, we've heard about the impact of women, on children, on society, and on development. Many women acquire various disabilities through violence that they are subjected to. These violence often are seen as the norm. It's okay for a man to beat up his wife. When we talk about rape, women get raped because they ask for it in some way, and that is still that thought is still very rife in Fiji. Just recently, I was quite shocked after 36 years of work, young men verifying the work that we do, really misogynistic comments on social media about reconciliation, about women's place, and so on. So that's quite shocking. After so many years, you think things have changed, but they haven't changed. So this whole process, this journey is going to be difficult. But to prevent all of this, that is what we are doing here today. The contribution of CSOs, especially the women's rights organizations of response, prevention, and advocacy, has been significant in this process so far, and we hope it continues. It's good to see the government and the CSO movement coming together to stop these terrible violations. And yes, we have always said, violence against women and girls is everyone's business, and it will take everyone, all of us here throughout Fiji, to stop it. A great step forward, all of government, whole of population approach. For the Crisis Center, as I've said before, a milestone and tremendous advancement in this work. What I think is critical to the prevention, that we all be on the same page. That is why these consultations are so important. Recognizing and being on the same page, meaning recognizing that it's a violation of women's human rights, gross violation, that the cause is patriarchy and all its associated discrimination and inequalities, which the National Action Plan is recognizing and it is based on. Thank you very much for that, for all who participated at the first consultation and getting that on the page. We as a nation take responsibility and be accountable to women and girls in this work. Men's and boys' involvement and advocacy is crucial in prevention work. Ongoing government commitment and resources are essential. that the work is evidence-based and aligned to global best practice, contextual and owned by us Fijians. We are going to take this forward with the support of all our partners. There will be a lot of challenges. It's about shifting decades of old beliefs and belief systems, attitudes. It will be critiquing patriarchy, which is always very difficult, unraveling religious and cultural myths that oppress women. It will be about changing behavior. This work is political and it is about change. It will be uncomfortable but worthwhile in the end. That is why these consultations must take place. You are the first high-level group that we will be having dialogue with today. The consultations will be facilitated, the ongoing consultations will be facilitated by a trained, experienced group with expertise. And the technical working group is with the ministry, with UN Women, and the CSOs are taking care of that. The group will listen, will facilitate discussions, and answer the questions. As a member of the team, and as someone who has spent most of her life at the FWCC, I'm excited to be on this journey. We don't expect things to end magically. If you look at global evidence, changes are and will be incremental. But we are in this together, and having seen the changes in our own prevention work over the years, I believe together we are stronger, and together we can and we will end all forms of violence against women and girls. In ending, I wish to congratulate the Prime Minister and the government of Fiji for making this commitment, and most of all, the leadership and the determination of the Minister for Women, Mereseni Vuniwanga, and the ministry. Thank you very much.
Shamima, I think you've pointed out critical aspects of the journey that we have in front of us. The need to work together being a very strong point here. And as acknowledged by the Honourable Prime Minister, the contribution of the civil society organizations, the work in this space, Fiji women rights organizations as well, that have worked in this space over the past decades that has enabled us as a nation to reach today. And on that note, I'd like to now invite the Reverend Serena Lomoloma, representative of faith-based organizations, which is also a critical sector when we're talking about prevention of violence against all women and girls. Faith-based context, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, will be one of the 13 sectors that will be consulted within the next few months. Thank you, Reverend.
Honorable Minister for Women, fellow panelists, Honorable Minister for and Shamima, Honorable Members of Parliament, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The question that was asked of me is on the importance of the faith community and their involvement in the prevention of violence against women and girls. And I'm going to be highlighting only two compelling reasons why it's important that faith communities are actively involved in preventing violence against women and girls. But also, first of all, I would like to mark this day, that it is a very important day. We've waited a long time for this to happen, and then it's happening on this day, on the 25th day, when the 60 days of activism is usually, we begin to celebrate. And so it's wonderful that, that it is happening today. And we want to acknowledge the work of the community of the NGOs who've been working in this area for a long, long time. As Shamima mentioned, she's been working in this area for more than 30 years. And other CSOs who've been here in this space, apart from government, faith-based organizations are also working in this area, but beginning to work in this area, and I will be highlighting that later on. And it's very, we are happy to hear today that the Honorable Minister says that NPOs we are a critical component for working in this area. And so we want to acknowledge that and to remind ourselves of the part that we should be playing. I said that I'll touch on the two areas where it's important that NPOs, faith-based organizations, faith communities, are actively involved in the prevention of violence against women and girls. In saying that, I must acknowledge that the government and the development partners are recognizing the importance of faith-based communities in this work. The onus really is on we from the faith-based communities to step forward and embrace this work as an integral part of our living out our faith in the community. This is part of we being members of the faith community, and we really must be engaged fully. The government and, as I said, development partners recognize that we are a critical part in this in the prevention work. Also in the provision of services, it really is, we ourselves should come forward and partner with the government and other CSOs in this work. One of the reasons why we really cannot sit back and not be engaged is when you look at the statistics in Fiji, the population of about 890,000, less than 1% is not affiliated to any religion, less than 1%. And so if we go by numbers alone, the most compelling reason for engaging the faith communities is because almost everyone identifies himself or herself with the faith community. And so the corollary of that is that to engage the faith communities is to touch the lives of almost every child, every person in Fiji, the young, the old, the male, the female, the LGBTQI, the people with disability, and those who live in urban areas, and those in remote parts of Fiji. But I will go back to my earlier statement saying government and development partners have accepted that they need NGOs in this space. We NGOs ourselves, Muslims and Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, should be part of this work. It is we the NGOs who need to really look at our engagement and come to the table to be engaged. And for my second point, I will share with us snippets of conversation from those who have been impacted with the introduction of the work that has been carried out in 3 communities by the House of Sarah in the area of prevention. And I quote, "In my family, you can all see the changes that is happening to us. Now we're sharing our roles from washing dishes in the kitchen, to cooking, to looking after children. My attitude and behavior is changing. I use violence on my wife. I even put hot water on her. But now I learn that that is not the way to behave. I have changed my attitude, and my children are also seeing the change, and they're not feeling frightened anymore." End of quote. The second one. For me, it has changed my mindset, and it has helped my family also. I grew up in a traditional Fijian family, where men are considered the head of the family. They eat first, and women and children are regarded as subordinates. But being part of this learning, I'm relooking at how I have been raised, the good and bad influences, and I'm slowly changing, and we are all looking after one another. And we are happy. the change that has started in me. Unquote. The third one, and I quote, I grew up accepting that violence that my mother faced is also part of my life. Now I know that that is not right. Now I know that it's wrong. Now I know that that is not the teaching of Christ, the God that I worship. Unquote. I share these bits of conversation to highlight that prevention of violence against women and girls touches the hearts, the minds, values and attitudes, behavior of all concerned. This means reassessing our socialization process and the influence of our faith tradition, the values that we pass on to the incoming generations, some good and some bad. Transforming those negative attitudes, the social norms and behavior that perpetuate gender inequality and gender-based violence to positive ones requires that the churches, religious bodies be change agents, because that is their core business.
Thank you, Reverend Longawama, for that insight into the role of faith-based organizations in the prevention of violence against all women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from our four distinguished speakers, starting with the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Women from Australia, highlighting the unique experience that Australia has gone through to get to the point that they're at in having a national plan in these regards. We are embarking on the same journey, and we've heard from our local distinguished speakers about the need to contextualize the experiences learned from other countries to make sure that the national action plan that we're going to develop in the next few months is something that we can all take ownership of, something that we can all understand as Fijians, no matter what sector that we serve in. And that requires a concerted effort. And when I look around the room, I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by the diverse groupings that are here, the different sectors that you occupy, that you work in, and the critical opportunity that we're presented with today to contribute together with one voice, with the same understanding about the root causes of violence against women and girls and how we can prevent it as a nation. And with that, I'd like to thank the honorable panelists that are here today. I'd also like to invite you, if you have, we'll take two questions for the panelists while they stay here before we close this session for the third part of this launch debate. We'll take two questions from the floor.
Honorable Minister, I just want to make a commitment for the Ministry of Health and Medical Services. We have 220 facilities all over Fiji. And yesterday we were talking about how we can make them climate resilient. And one thing that I shared with our Minister of Health leaders, I said, it should also be a place of refuge in disasters. And I want to make a commitment that our 220 facilities is a place of refuge for Indian women across this nation. That if they have a place, they're in a village, they're in a settlement, they feel like they have nowhere to run to, they're more than welcome to come to any Minister of Health and Safety. We also have to make a commitment that we will work with your ministry to make sure that we work together on the policies, sharing data, making sure that we work on the referral networks that need to be there. And as we continue with our digitalization program, hopefully share some of that digital data so that we can be able to look at particular areas, because data is important, identifying, knowing what the patterns are, then be able to go through a root cause analysis to be able to solve the problems at hand. That would do.
If there are no questions from the floor, Going once, twice. If there are no questions, Nolin.
The only thing I would say, Nolin Oligo from Deep for Equality, and we all know one of the best things I think that that I'm feeling today, and I'm quite emotional about this too, is systems change isn't easy. We know that we don't just want to do, the kind of spot ad hoc changes that don't really add up to something that is really meaningful. One of the things I'm thinking about today is that when a woman, a survivor, is strong enough to come forward and confront the system, whether it's within their family, whether it's within the workplace, whether it's within the wider community, what are you looking forward to in terms of changes to the system that really can have a society and a system that is ready to respond? When a woman is strong enough to come and to stand against all of this, what do we have to offer? And we've just heard that from the Minister for Health, but what are some of the other things we're looking forward to that comes out of a joint Fiji National Action Plan? Thanks.
Thank you, Nolin, for asking the hard question. No, definitely, there's a wish list of all because the systems, when we talk about prevention, the systems have to be, there's a lot of improvement we need in all the systems which respond to women and girls who are suffering from violence. So, this is like, for example, when we do the prevention plan and so on, I hope that those recommendations will also be made and carried through. As the Minister for Health was talking, I see a lot of public health graduates who are applying for jobs at the crisis center. This can be so much part of the public health system. People going out and talking and doing prevention work. The law enforcement, of course, that is always a challenge, and that needs to be straightened out systematically, not an ad hoc moment. The medical services, everything, social services, everything. So, Nolin, you are right. Prevention work does include all of that, so that everyone is held accountable to women and the sustainability of those services.
Nolin, I'd just like to add that I think one of the strengths that we have is we begin to map and identify where we are all at. Once we map and identify where we are, what the commitment from Minister of Health is, what the Minister of Women are doing, what the faith-based organizations, again within the faith-based organizations, or within the major groupings, what are they individually doing? Once we got all that, when we mapped it out, then we can have a layered approach. And one of the strengths of our COVID-19 response was a layered approach. And I'd like to share that maybe that's something that we can also use for this activism. We identify what we have, we map it out, we identify the gaps, and then we develop a layered approach. So that if it falls to one side, if it falls to the Minister of Health, the church will pick it up. If it falls to the church, maybe the CSO will pick it up. But that's something that I'm suggesting that we can do. I believe there's a lot of work that's being done, and we all believe in it. I think what needs to happen is to have a coordinating infrastructure in place so that we can be able to map it all out and then identify where the gaps are in one particular area and move this across to be able to look after that gap. And then we have a later approach.
Thank you for the question, Nolin. I think I want to highlight again that for prevention, the emphasis is transforming attitudes and behavior and norms. And so it's very important that we really go back to, go to the education system where our children are. And not only that, the faith-based communities, they have programs with young people, children's ministries. I'm sure also with the Hindu and the Muslim communities, they have programs with the younger children. And so that's where we will be beginning from, because we want to cultivate a culture of safety And so everybody needs to be engaged there in transforming, transforming lives. I mean, looking at attitudes. And so I come again to the important work that faith-based communities must engage in. And I'm really happy to let everyone know, the faith-based communities, a lot of the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, the Anglican, Salvation Army, Baptist Convention, they are already beginning to begin this work in this area. And then next week, the AUG will be beginning this work institutionalizing our cultural faith. And that is because we want to be really looking into attitudes and behavior. And there's the services that we offer, that Christ is well known for, but also other faith-based organizations that we engage in, whether it's counseling or whether it's referral. But the new work of prevention is huge piece of work, which is looking at social norms and attitudes. And so the messages that we preach from the pulpit, the teachings that we're going to be doing in our churches and in our religious organizations have to be looked at again, so that the right messages are being covered. Thank you.
Now that we've heard from our 4 panelists today, I will now hand over to the Director of Women in Shamima. But before that, I think there's another question from the floor.
My apologies, Madam Minister. But Susan from Family Pacific, and thank you all the panelists. And my comment and question is more or less related to the state and government agencies. And thank you, Reverend Serima, about talking about social norms and so forth. My comment is really also about the years that you were talking about, Honorable Minister, about having that multi-pronged, multi-layered approach. And I guess when we're talking about social norms and attitudes and transformative change, you're also talking about the work that the Ministry of Education in particular could perhaps be looking at and working with the technical working group and working with the Honorable Minister for Women and yourself on the curriculum and the transformation that could do right from early childhood. And also in that respect, I'd also like to make a comment regarding the Ministry of Rural and Maritime and just that coordination amongst the state agencies and so forth. We support a network of rural women, and we're really going to have that sort of consolidation coming in from the various state agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. I think when we launched this in January this year, there was a media launch of our National Action Plan, and there were 4 critical ministries that were part of the launch. One of them was the Ministry of Education, in recognition of the critical role that the Ministry of Education will have to play in this arena. And if we look at our pamphlets, it's part of your package here today, you'll find that the education sector is one of the 13 sectors that will be part of this consultation. I agree. Like I said, this National Action Plan, the beauty about it, the consultation process, it's a whole of government, whole of population exercise. So it needs all of us. It needs all our buy-in into the process. And today's show, today's launch, is a great symbol of that. The all-inclusive approach in putting this National Action Plan together. I think now I'll hand over to the Director of Women in Shamima, who will take us to the broader Talanoa session. But before that, I ask all of us to give a big round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And I now invite the panelists to take their seat, except Shamima. Thank you very much. I believe you're facilitating this session with me. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all this morning we've been hearing about the problems that we're facing with this issue of violence against all women and girls. As a member of the Secretariat, the Technical Working Group, we were very excited to see the leaders from the different sectors and settings that were coming in this morning to be part of this first consultation of the development of the National Action Plan on the prevention of violence against all women and girls. So we would like to hear from you now as the first consultation. This is the process that we will be taking out, the team of facilitators will be taking out to the community. As you heard, it's a whole of government, whole of population consultation. So as leaders, from your different sectors and your settings, we've heard a few suggestions this morning. We would like to hear what are your thoughts and how you would like to see the development of this National Action Plan. And for those of you that did not have the opportunity to comment, to ask the questions, you may do so now in our town hall discussion. Thank you. So, I have a question.
From the Fiji Association. I just want to to raise a point here on the accessibility of information or communication accessibility because of the toll-free line that FWCC have. But for us and my community, is there anything such as free texting so that we can call when it happens and we can just send a message? Is there any free texting, like free toll line?
Actually, we don't have that as yet. We don't have the free texting as yet, but we are looking into it. I know it's very, very necessary.
Sorry, Madam. So yes, so in the process of trying to make it accessible, it would be advisable to contact the Fiji Disabled People's Federation, the work with the Fiji Association of the Deaf, because women, deaf women, suffer, go through domestic violence, and they need this helpline to be able to access the platform. Thank you.
Actually, we do have, we're not totally cut off, we do have that when women do come with those particular disabilities that we are in touch with them, the VA to know the resources that are available for us. But thank you, definitely we will be consulted.
I was going to raise this question earlier because it's related to what Susie had raised in the discussion, and it's to do with, we had heard about Reverend Seremos talking about mind and soul apart. And I was wondering at what stage in our consultation would the Ministry of Education come in? Do we still now talk about discrimination against women, which is the fundamental issue here? It's like we talk of violence leads that gender environment is discrimination against women. And one of our favorite subject of discussion at the time was not education, STEM, and curriculum. STEM is a subject, in favor, not only in favor of the boys, but also in girls to do those other science and technology related subjects. And then we talked about the curriculum. I was just wondering at what stage we could include the Ministry of Education in this process as we talk about advocacy and the curriculum itself. Which I think is the most effective in educating our children about this subject. Thank you.
Actually, the Minister has already mentioned the the ministries that are going to be leading this work. It's going to be Education, Health, the Ministry for Women, and Youth. Those are the 4 ministries of government that will be leading the work. So definitely education is very important, as you said there. And SPC has got a very robust program through its human rights program on developing curriculum to address human rights, gender, talking about gender and things like that.
Shamima Anna from Manama. I see that we have traditional institutions and entities in phase 2. I had a question while you were there. Would we have some kind of data on perpetrators from the rural compared to the urban? And we'd be interested in your plans of addressing traditional institutions and entities.
Again, the whole program is partnering with DPK Affairs. They're going to play a very major role in this. And your first question was...
do you have any information on
yes. Oh yes, definitely. The National Survey of 2011, I'll let you answer this also. 2011 has shown that the Eastern Division in Fiji has one of the highest rates of violence in the world. India. So we have that analysis there, and 10 years later, next year, we're doing the next one, the national survey, so that shows more. But, there is, you like to okay, so then there's other, administrative data from other organizations that are doing this work, and then you've got police, you've got health, and so on. But the national survey did indicate that the Eastern Division had the highest levels. So,
and in fact, just to add to Shamima's point, and maybe it will answer a lot of the questions. For us here, we're asking for your input as to how we move forward in developing the plan. You would have heard it mentioned continuously this morning where we were talking about evidence-based. So how we identified the 13 settings and the 13 key sectors, this was done using that method with the initial workshop that Shamima had also referred to, where we had government agencies, civil society organizations, faith-based organizations. So there will be a team of facilitators that will be moving out with government agencies into these 13 settings and sectors. And what we've gathered from evidence that we've worked with will also be presented to these 13 settings and sectors as justification to say that yes, this is why we need to develop this plan, this is why we need to prevent violence before it happens. But all that has been undertaken to get where we are today, and will also continue as we move forward. Thank you.
I would like to know, do you have a counseling and monitoring process on the survivors after the report is done? And then this expectation, do you have a counseling and monitoring process on the survivors?
Yes, there are various organizations like the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, Empower Pacific. We have our own MSP, and other organizations, the faith-based organizations, the House of Sarah and so on, organizations that are doing that work. So they do have that counseling. Counseling is the core business, and monitoring the women, not monitoring but ongoing counseling. So that is available. Is that?
I'd like to commend government for the great initiative. Just one question, maybe slash comment as well. We're trying to come up with a action plan, national action plan on preventing violence against women and girls. Just wondering whether we can change VAWG to VAWC. Because boys are also victims of violence and abuse in the family. I'm just wondering, where do they stand with this action plan? I noticed it's preventing violence against women and girls. What about boys? Because children, you insert the word children, it's all inclusive. Otherwise, there has to be another action plan preventing violence against boys. So I'm just wondering whether VAWG can be changed to VAWC. C, of course, children. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment. As I said, this is a consultation process, so the comments that we're going to hear in this room, the Secretariat is recording that, and we will take that in for consideration and discussion, further discussions. Thank you very much. But yes, of course, we understand that violence against children is also something that will affect women. So we thank you for that comment, and we'll take that on board. Thank you very much.
I'd like to call upon the technical working group sitting in this room. Please answer some questions also.
Madam Director and Chairman, Winnie from Catholic Women's League, we're very happy to be a part of this discussion. Chairman might be happy to know that we organized in collaboration with Women at the Well and the Grace Ministry a march from St. Anne's to church, where we have mass and we're laying wreaths to remember those who have died, victims of domestic violence. My question is, we're referring to data from 2011. Is there any plan to carry out another survey?
We're planning another one 10 years after, because that's when we can do some comparative studies. So next year is when we will.
Thank you. And just to add to Shamima's point was talking about somebody's life, everybody's business. It's a report with other reports that the technical working group and the Secretariat use to get where we are at the moment. From the National Women's Machinery level, we're also in the process of conducting a country gender assessment. So we're also looking to get data as well in all areas. Thank you.
My name is Winston. I'm a male. But over the years, because of this issue, my mother has features very much. And my question is to do with the purpose of this great opportunity we have today. One is that I'm amazed with the originality. We are among the first to come together. What I have learned today, Australia is one of them. On this unique space we have today. Secondly, I'm impressed with what I heard from our Prime Minister about the the contribution of make sure that the law and policies are in place supporting this. So somehow things that I didn't know have been updated today. My mother comes in because she contributed the whole family with her weaving and sewing. And she told us weaving for a mat has to do with a particular event, and the pattern goes together. The uniqueness of the event that the mat represents and the story is expressed in a pattern. Now I come to the question. Since the climate change and COVID-19, I came to realize in order to move forward, we have to find a new way. We can no longer now talk of the language of the past. That's the pattern I'm looking for. I look and I marvel at the 13 components or 13 sectors. My question to the committee: have you thought out or find in your consultation a very distinct pattern? So as we weave this mat, what we have today comes out clear. The question has to do with what I have learned from the debates of what was going on at the election at the United States. What I learned from there, we know what has to be done, but we find it difficult to do it. Would this pattern clarifies that? When we do action, we are very proud, not only to talk about it in action, but we make it. As Pacific people, we don't only talk. Good things, we jump up and make it. So my question is, would the people do this process be able to come out with a clear pattern, that a pattern not seen in the past? This is totally new, because violence is a language, as I have heard today, finished here. Thank you.
Well, that is for us, that is why we're holding the consultation. Thank you very much for that question. And that is why the consultations are, it's not just us telling you, we have got certain principles and so on that should be enshrined in there. But the consultations will tell us the pattern, what you, the people of Fiji, will tell us, and what will work for us. So, you know, that's why we are gathering all the information right now. So, that's, you know, if you, that's a good suggestion that we will take on, and then other people also, if you have anything to add on to that, you can do that now. We are looking at ways in which using, what are the kind of things that we will do to prevent right before it starts.
Thank you, Director, and Shamini. It's Betty from the Fiji Red Cross. A lot of times, a lot of the narratives around domestic violence and violence against women, we hear about spikes in this violence, especially during disaster. I'm just, as a request, it would be interesting to actually find out what are these numbers. What does it look like during disasters, in times of disasters, and what are some of the easy processes that are available to women? Because I know when there's a disaster, there's a lot of chaos. So, and what are the processes that are easily, readily available at evacuation centers or communities that women can access, and also children? For me, that would be an interesting thing for us to see, because even right now, these are some numbers we are looking for, and we are not really able to pin down specifics. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment. And of course, we will look to the Fiji Red Cross to help us in that area. And I mean, just going back to the comment and the question, the last question before Lily gave us that comment on the new system, and we've learned from COVID-19, as rightly said, the new norm, the new way of doing things, and this for us is how we're looking to handle it. As Shamima has said, it's learning from you and from the 13 sectors and settings that we have identified. So it's not just government and the CSOs going out there and saying that this is how it's supposed to be done. But we're going to these sectors, we have the leads in these sectors, and we're working with the communities to tell us that. And on data and statistics, thank you, Beth, for sharing that with us. Evidence-based is also how we're looking to develop this plan so that it's sustainable, that we can continue to move forward as we develop the national action plan. Thank you.
Andrew Moffat, Salvation Army. I'm not a Fijian, I'm a New Zealander, but I ask on behalf of the Fijian ladies who come through our family care centres, on behalf of our congregation members who are female, what percentage of the violence is related to alcohol use, and what measures will be undertaken to prevent that?
So sorry, I apologize. Can we just have that question repeated?
No, that's okay. What percentage of violence against women is alcohol related, and what measures will be undertaken to prevent that?
Anyone else like to answer the question from the crisis center data that we have? It's not a lot of it related to alcohol, the actual intoxication. A lot of it is around conflicts around the finances and so on, spent on alcohol. So but I don't know about the others here. And we'll look at you to tell us, how do you address that? So, but is there anyone else who wants to share on alcohol-related violence? It is not a cause, it definitely is a contributing factor. We don't have hard data, but from the crisis center, it's not a great percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Archbishop Peter from the Catholic Church. Just something that I'd like to see included in the 13 key settings for prevention in Fiji. And I don't know, it might be already there, but it's not coming out clear to me. And that's the importance of marriage, family relationships, as the family is the basic cell of society. If we can see that, good ministry around preparing for marriage and the whole sustenance of family life as part of, as an important setting for the 13 key settings there. And also that in the education sector, that informal education, meaning things that don't happen in the classroom, be also an important component of this education sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe just to introduce myself, my name is Abby Erickson and I'm with UN Women. We've been supporting the Secretariat, the Ministry for Women, and the Crisis Center and the other CSOs. Thank you so much for that. I think we all know that one of the most important things is looking at shared and equal power relationships within the home. And what you just talked about there is really about safe and equal and happy homes and families. and strategies that are looking to build equal power sharing within the home, within schools, within communities, are very much going to be part of what we would expect to hear from stakeholders, particularly from the faith setting, from the education setting, but really, of course, across many of the sectors and settings we'd be consulting with. Thank you, Naka.
I just wanted to contribute because Shamima was saying some of the technical working group could also support, and Archbishop Winston, part of I think what's been wonderful is that we are working on evidence-based approaches, you know, from work that's been done for decades around the world. And if you look at page 2 in your package that's been given to you, some of the patterns that are woven through issues of violence against women and girls and gender-based violence is violence against women and girls being accepted and justified, men and boys having power and control over women and girls, the peer relations that, you know, promote aggression and disrespect towards women and girls, and one of the other ones is traditional gender roles determining how women and men should and can behave. So this is really about, you know, those sets of work we've already done as women's movements and as governments and civil society around the world, and now kind of putting them together and saying this is how they weave together, this is how some of those patterns of oppression and resistance can be taken forward. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Reddy and I work at the Fiji Women's Fund, one of the only national women's funds in the Pacific. I wanted to say congratulations to the government of Fiji and to the Ministry of Women and also to the feminist movement in Fiji. You really certainly paved the way on the work around evil, so congratulations. I'm also really glad to see that part of the national plan is a costed implementation plan, because any plan requires some form of resources, whether it's financial resources or non-financial resources. So it's really great to see that. I think one of the things I would be also be looking at is how can the plan generate resources from our own people? How can we contribute as citizens and individuals towards the implementation plan? I think that's really also another opportunity to look at. So congratulations once again.
Just wondering what role will social media technology play in creating awareness for this? So whether the action group or the secretariat already has something in mind about, taking advantage of the social media and creating awareness, especially the younger generation, on this particular issue.
Just pass over to one of our technical working group members, Nalini Singh.
Hi, I'm Nalini Singh from the Fiji Women's Rights Movement, as Abby said, from the technical working group. So for the acknowledging the young people of the country, and for the consultation process, we have a unique approach to reaching out to young people. One aspect is, of course, using the social media platforms, and there is, and of course, the face-to-face consultations, which will be Colonel style in terms of engaging them to understand what we have as part of this process and what solutions are needed. As part of rolling out the awareness process, and then what will happen after the plan is put forward, of course there is going to be a substantial aspect of this is going to be rolled out on social media. It's not just young people who are on social media, it's a lot of us. If you look at the penetration of internet across the country and devices that we have, there's a lot of us on devices, and we are more and more looking at different media platforms in terms of reaching, in terms of how do we seek information. So that is also part of this consultation process, and the end product is going to be designed
in terms of what the consultations are telling us. So what the solutions, what processes, what steps should be taken, plus how that should be designed will, of course, be curated to fit in the needs of people in our country.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Nadine. Just a comment on having that multi-layered sort of approach with the consultations. I also would just like to also touch on our key influencers who actually sit in Parliament, our leaders and so on, so that they're actually part of this consultation rather than they're there getting, like an almost final draft and having their input in. So it would be really, it would be really great that that consultation also involves our members of Parliament and so on. And also just further on to what Nadine just said, I'd also just like to touch a lot, just to emphasize the amount of online violence that's actually going on. And that is also that's also considered greatly by the by the consultation and by the TWG. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment, Susie, and we'll take on board the consultation with the members of Parliament. And I understand that cyberbullying is also cyber violence. It's also an area that is in for consultation under the 13 settings and sectors. And I will take that as the final comment and question from the distinguished members and the audience, the guests that are still here. And I would now like to call upon the Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Honorable Mercedes Muniwanga, to deliver her closing remarks that will see the closing of today's session. Thank you very much.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I think today has been an amazing day, an inspiring day for all of us. And our goal is very clear: prevent violence against all women and girls, stop it before it starts. I'm grateful to the distinguished panelists for sharing your knowledge, insights, and valuable experiences. Found it extremely informative and helpful. I would like to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to the Technical Working Group and Secretariat for the Fiji National Action Plan to prevent violence against all women and girls. Thank you very much for your hard work, your dedication, your time, and most importantly, technical expertise and guidance to reach where we're at today and for the journey ahead of us. Friends and colleagues, the development of the National Action Plan is led by the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation on behalf of the Fijian government. However, there are two groups that support the overall development process: a secretariat led by the Ministry with support from UN Women and the Fiji Women's Crisis Center. This group ensures that the National Action Plan's progress and supports administration, and a technical working group comprised of key ministries, civil society organizations, and community and faith-based organizations, providing strategic and technical oversight over the development of the plan. May I now request the members of the technical working group and the secretariat to stand up. Please, members of the secretariat and technical working group. I invite us here to join me to extend our appreciation and a round of applause. Today would not have been possible without the significant and collective efforts of these truly amazing individuals. Thank you. but we also now know the faces who to look to see that this process ends well, the way we want it to be. Allow me to also extend my appreciation to our development partners, including the European Union, the Government of Australia, and Government of New Zealand, and UN Women for the generous support through the Pacific Partnership to End Violence Against Women and Girls program. Violence against women and girls, we all know, is a human rights violation that remains all too pervasive in every part of the world, and Fiji is no exception. Too often it goes unreported and unpunished, sometimes with deadly consequences. As we did discuss during the panel discussion about the root causes of violence in gender inequality, men's power and control over women, also known as patriarchy, and associated ingrained belief systems that support this gender inequality. The government of Fiji recognizes its obligation to prevent violence against all women and girls. And I'm deeply honored to be here today with you to give emphasis again to this commitment with the development of our National Action Plan. A whole of government, whole of population, evidence-based, inclusive and funded National Action Plan to prevent violence against all women and girls, 2021 to 2026. I truly believe that with a whole of population, whole of government, evidence-based approach, inclusive and funded National Action Plan, we will be better placed as a nation than ever before to prevent violence against all women and girls in Fiji. I understand that the extent and depth of social change required to end this violence against women and girls is daunting. It will not happen overnight, but the time for change is here and now. We're at a crossroads. It is time to further our collective efforts and actions. That takes all of us, working at the same time, towards the same goal, with the same understanding. All Fijians, men, women, boys and girls, I'm hopeful and we are dedicated. We are optimistic as well, that together we can stop violence against all women and girls in this country before it starts. And with these words, I close the official launch of the National Consultation for the Development of the National Action Plan to Prevent Violence Against All Women and Girls. And I thank you all again for your attendance today, your contributions and insights.
Sorry,